tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here covering the Rowdies tonight. We are doing a Rowdy show this week, as much as maybe I might not want to. We'll wait till we get into that. We always start, Carlos, you and I, with the pleasantries, and I think this is as good a time as any for pleasantries. How are you doing after this past weekend?
Yeah, James, I'm doing well. As you well know, I could be doing better, but
Sure.
yeah, I mean, as for how my weekend went, it was pretty relaxing. Me and my chapter of my fraternity here at Georgetown, we went out to ironically Georgetown, Delaware, and got an Airbnb out there and spent the weekend just kind of chilling, exploring the area. Went to a beach in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Just kind of exploring the area and hanging out, bonding with the new guys and whatnot. But the reason I bring that up is because I got like all of these guys hooked on the Rowdies now, which is always a fun time to expose some new people to this team and the family and the community around it. Yeah, so that was a really good time. Georgetown soccer is kind of killing it right now. The women's team won the Big East last weekend. The men's team is playing the semifinal on Thursday. Hopefully they get back to the final on Sunday. We can get a big contingent out there. So, I mean, in the soccer world, as far as things go outside the Rowdies, James, good weekend. But as you well know, as we're going to talk about here, things unfortunately did not go our way this past weekend for the Rowdies. But again, before we get into any of that, James, how was your weekend? What did you do?
Yeah, my weekend was all right. I went to watch the game, which we still haven't talked about just yet, with producer Eureka. We went to the watch party that was at Corrigan's, and, that was great up until it wasn't. But, that's just the nature of sports, I guess. Outside of that, it was okay. Tried to get a couple of things done, and some of those did get done. Some of them did not. Anyway, we're gonna just get into it. I think we're gonna go ahead and get started on this, Carlos. We've been dragging it out long enough. I think that everybody knows where we're going, even if we don't want to go there ourselves. On Saturday night, the Rowdies went away to Louisville City, and they lost 1-0. So, Carlos, you and I get no points for our predictions because neither of them came true in the end, either result or scoreline. We do not have any more games to preview in 2022, as you're aware, but we do have other stuff to talk about. Instead of next week talking about the Rowdies and doing, the season post-op, as it were, I think that it is time to give ourselves a break after this one tonight. And next week, Carlos, you and I are going to talk about the World Cup, and we're going to give a little preview of that so that everybody has something to think about when that starts up. And then after that, we can start looking at what the Rowdy season looked like overall and, how certain players did, all that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's quite the time that we need to do that just now. We don't need to do that to ourselves, and we don't need to do that to the listeners either. So we'll get into this game here. Just beforehand, I want to say, follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, please, at RBLR Sports. And if you can, like and subscribe to our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Now, Carlos, we can jump in. We can dive in, as all the memes about podcasts say online. Can you give us a quick recap of this game against Louisville?
Of course. Yeah. So in goal, we had Breno, as always, keeping up his streak of starts in the playoffs and on this back end of the season, as well as Antley, Wyke, and Castellanos and Guillen making up the back line, the main defensive core for the team. You had Leo Fernandez, Hilton, Nicky Law, and Armin making up the main chunk of the midfield, with Sebastian Guanzati and Jake LaCava playing as our main forwards and attackers. But again, it's always kind of funny for me to kind of like give position names to the players because they're constantly moving, and Neil Collins is always moving the formation around. So Leo started as a midfielder, but I mean, I think pretty quickly he pushed up and he was kind of like another winger, and we were playing with a front three. So take that with a grain of salt. With that being said, the game did turn out to be a very cagey affair, like James and I mentioned would likely happen last week. There were some real head scratchers of substitutes, as mentioned by a lot of Rowdies fans on Twitter, I think. Something that caught me very off guard when we brought out our MVP candidate in Leo Fernandez pretty early on. And Corbin Bone got himself a red card for Louisville in the early 80s, kind of towards the end of the game. So real moment of advantage for the Rowdies, going up a player with the last 8 minutes or so and into extra time, but no goal created, unfortunately. Late in extra time, Louisville City had a chance off of a set piece, bounced around, and their shot ended up going into the back of the net, unfortunately. For that, we had no answer, and we could not get a goal on the board despite being up a player throughout all of extra time and throughout those last 8 minutes of regulation. Very, very unfortunate, but we will be missing out on the USL Championship game, losing the Eastern Conference Final for the first time in the past 3 seasons to the team that we beat the last 2 years. So this matchup, James, is turning into very much kind of like I don't know. I saw one of the commentators compare it to like the boxing trilogies they have. It's like Rowdies, Louisville 3. We're basically just alternating sites every year. So I guess we can expect this game to be played in Al Lang next season at this rate. Nonetheless, James, that was the result. That's what happened, unfortunately. We can kind of talk about what the finals are going to look like in a little bit here. But before we do any of that, I think it's just good to go back, break down this game. Really, I'm struggling with the question of what went wrong. You know what I mean, James? How did this game go tactically? It was 0-0 until the second half of extra time. I don't really know why, because these are two teams that have a lot of firepower, particularly the Rowdies going up a player with a lot of time to make something happen and nothing going well offensively. What did you see? Do you have any comments or concerns about how that game went? Just a very strange game, I think.
Yeah, actually, I think that that's a pretty good way to put it. Much like Memphis, I think that the Rowdies were not, they weren't maybe the team even that we saw in the game, before Memphis. I think that when the Rowdies played the Miami FC, we saw a lot more fluid team. And, as much as the Rowdies have had more problems this year, I shouldn't say that. I need to double check my math on that before I say anything definitively. But it certainly seems as though the Rowdies have had more trouble away this year than in previous years. Now, maybe that was what happened with Memphis. Maybe that was what happened with Louisville City. I'm not entirely sure. Regardless, it was definitely a weird game, and I don't think that it was us at our best. I don't know who would argue that point, but maybe someone out there will. As for tactics, I think that it can be broken down not super easily, but relatively easily. The first half, we went out there and it was kind of like we had 5 at the back. When we didn't have the ball, especially. Jake Arman was in a role where he was allowed to go up and down, so that's kind of where that fluidity came in. And he and Connor Antley, though, would both get very high when we had the ball. And Jake Arman was often acting, almost as a left winger of sorts. And then Connor Antley would try to get himself a little bit higher. I don't think that he had quite as much success in terms of getting himself well down the wing, like maybe we're used to him doing. That definitely came from Louisville's press. They were very good at that, and it, went to their benefit a lot. But outside of that, it was difficult to see exactly where chances were coming from for either of these teams. Yeah. And I don't think the Rowdies had the best run of it in the first half, Carlos. We were under a very good press from Louisville. It was very well coordinated. And I think that their extra man in the midfield compared to the central midfield, I should say, compared to us was helpful because, as we mentioned before, they usually start with a couple of people in the midfield being Corbin Bone, who we weren't sure if he was going to be injured or not. He was back. Corbin Bone, Paolo Del Piccolo, and then Tyler Gibson. And those guys proved themselves to be the USL vets, the seasoned USL, very, very apt players at this level. They know what they're doing. They know how to do the jobs and the tasks that they're given. And yeah, they did them not just well in this game, but like in terms of shutting the Rowdies down from creating things, they really excelled there. I think that, the Rowdies tried to get our usual thing going of getting players down the wing, but we didn't have a ton of success at creating those chances. And even when, Connor Antley was able to get down there was one chance where Connor Antley got down there in the first half, and he cut a ball across for Sebastian Guinzadi to score. And as much as we were all celebrating down at Corrigan's, unfortunately, that was called offside. So, yeah, that was another one where we just didn't have a ton of success even getting at the plays that I think we usually do in the first half.
Yeah. No, and I'm trying to think back about where or when our biggest, kind of clearest chances came. There really just weren't a ton of dangerous opportunities for us. And I mean, it kind of sucks to say just because there's so much talent out there on the field. There really wasn't a lot going for us. And then second half came around, Steven Dos Santos comes in for Jake LaCava, which was a sub we saw last week as well. I think both times that substitution didn't really produce anything like totally substantial. So it was interesting to see that happen again. But he did have that one chance where, I don't know if you remember this, James, but there was kind of like a chaotic moment in the box as the ball just kind of bouncing around. Steven Dos Santos and I think both Louisville defenders totally lose the ball. By the time Dos Santos turns around and just rips a shot, it goes like a mile over the bar. But that was a really dangerous opportunity that if he could just find, if he was able to find the ball a little bit earlier and kind of gather himself before he ripped that shot, maybe caught the ball a little earlier before it hit the bounce. I mean, easily that could have been a 1-0 lead for us pretty early on in the second half, if I remember correctly. Apart from that, I was looking back at the stats, and it feels like most of the opportunities we created, of the relatively few opportunities we created, the shots that we let fly, the possession we had, I feel like a lot of that came when we came up an extra man. We were just kind of holding onto the ball. Yeah. So I think the stats are a little bit misleading in that way, because that kind of helped to kind of buffer us a little bit going into the last few minutes of regulation, and then going into extra time or overtime as well. So I think in that way the stats can be a little misleading to favor us, and I think it shows that we played better than we really did, because like really it was just very not. I don't think it was too dissimilar from the Memphis game, honestly. The game against Memphis was kind of similar in that way, in that we didn't really create a ton of opportunities. Memphis had the ball for much of the first half. It was a similar situation here. We even made the same sub at the end of the first half, like we did against Memphis. It was very, very similar in that way. And I think that's why it was a little bit tougher to swallow, just because like we got away with one in Memphis, even though we didn't play too well. I think it caught up with us this game. You can't really have those kind of back-to-back performances where the other team's imposing their game on you for much of the game, and you get away with one at their place. That's just not in the playoffs. Right. It's not going to go well for you eventually, and it caught up with us. I think that's the best way to summarize it. It's not that Louisville played particularly well. And I think that also makes it a little tough to swallow, is that like I know if we played our game, if we went out with a little bit more fire, we could have definitely beat this team and been going to San Antonio next weekend. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough to swallow, really. It really is, like, tough game to watch, honestly, especially in that overtime with really just getting nothing created despite being up an extra player. And I don't know if you have anything else to say on this, James, but I think that kind of leads into the next question that I had for you. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the substitutes were real head scratchers. It's a very strange, situation with Leo Fernandez getting subbed out before the 70th minute. Guenzati, who's been kind of on a hot streak, getting subbed out in like the 75th minute. Who else? I mean, I think those were the key ones. And I think that might have come back to haunt us slightly when we went up an extra man, not having like our key creators on the field when we were up an extra player might have come back to haunt us. Do you have any thoughts for why Neil might have made those subs? Because like I've been trying to figure it out, and like I know he likes to move the formations around. I know he likes to bring in Dayon Harris late. That didn't surprise me, but it was bringing in Dayon for Guenzati and bringing in who came in for Leo? It was Jan Ekra came in for Leo Fernandez. That is very weird. It really is. I don't know if he's just trying to throw Louisville off a little bit, knowing that they know who our best players are. And then all of a sudden, boom, here comes Jan Akra. Maybe he's been like a weapon in practice this week. But it feels like it came back to haunt us when we got that red card advantage for us.
Yeah, this was a big talking point for the fans that were around us when we were at the game, or not the game, but the watch party for the game, naturally. So yeah, the first sub that the Rowdies made does make sense. Steven Dos Santos for Jake LaCava at halftime. That's something that we saw, as you said last week. That's a normal sub. We expected that, and I think that it did help. I think that we were at least better in being able to go and actually try to create something, not just through the not try to create something through the middle, but like there was actually an outlet up there. It was easier with Steven Dos Santos than having Sebastian Guenzati play that role, because I think that having somebody who could play with his back to the goal and hold the defender off, that came into play more than once. And Steven Dos Santos was involved in two pretty big, not opportunities, but two pretty big parts of the game where he hit he hit the goalkeeper once, and then the goalkeeper hit him again later, and both of those were calls for the referee to have to deal with that were questionable one way and another. But that was more of a silly moment when Steven Dos Santos kind of ran into their goalkeeper / was run into, but definitely hammed it up out there. I wasn't entirely sure what he was going for there, other than maybe to emulate Philip Goodrum from Memphis last week. Now, he was also involved in a play where he nearly scored. I think it came off his hand, and it was ultimately called back for that. But he still did, get himself into important positions, and he helped the Rowdies out when we had possession, because we were giving it up a lot in the first half. We were not good at connecting passes in that first half, so that definitely changed. Now, after that, it does get a little weird, as you said. The next substitution came in the 62nd minute, Sebastian Dalgard for Jake Arman. That makes sense, too. Sebastian Dalgard has done really well this year, and Jake Arman was coming off of an injury. This was the first time that he had started since then. In fact, I think that he's just had spot minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, and honestly, I was surprised to see him starting. Really, such a crucial game. I mean, just coming back, I haven't seen him starting forever. There was no reason for me to expect Arman over Dalgard. So that sub totally makes sense. If not, I would have expected the reverse for Arman to be coming in for Dalgard around the 75th minute or something like that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That is the way that I would have expected it before I saw the lineup. Anyway, so the next one is effectively this at the same time. It says the 62nd and the 63rd minute. I think that we can say that they just happened simultaneously. As you said, Jan Ekra comes on for Leo Fernandez. And so everyone that's in the bar when we are there is like, what? Wait, what? Is this correct? What's going on here? And I looked at Eureka, and Eureka was looking around at everybody else who was, we were all just as confused as the next person. And I don't think that anyone in the bar had any idea what was going on there. I don't think that I said at the time and after the game that something had to happen that Leo Fernandez came out. And I don't know exactly what it was. I still don't know. And I think that still something must have been going on there with Leo Fernandez that he came out early. Now, here's what I will say about this. And then, Carlos, I'll turn it over to you with this thought and see what you have to say. Sebastian Guenzati stayed on until the 78th minute, and then he was subbed out. Now, Sebastian Guenzati, as you also alluded to, he's been doing well recently. I'm not sure that you want to take him out at all. But between the two of those players, over the course of this season, the far more consistent person, and he is literally in the running for MVP at the time of at the time of this game going down. Leo Fernandez came off and Sebastian Guenzati stayed on. I don't understand why. If you're going to bring both of those players out at some point, let's just grant that that is the premise, because I have seen Sebastian Guenzati go off earlier than I expected him to plenty of times this season. I will say that. But Leo Fernandez before Sebastian Guenzati, and when we probably even with stoppage time, it would be another 30 minutes to go in this game. That I don't get at all unless something is up. And that is what I said to everyone that, I was talking to afterwards, is there must be something up. Now, we haven't heard anything, but I just don't get why he would come off before Sebastian Guenzati unless something like that happened.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. It's such a strange thing, and it's hard to speculate and put myself in the ever fascinating mind of Neil Collins. I think you make a good point in that, Sebastian Guenzati, he has been a candidate to come off throughout the season, like middle of the second half, late in the second half or so. So I guess the sub of Deion Harris for Guenzati doesn't, like, that by itself doesn't necessarily surprise me, because Deion Harris has been playing kind of like a more forward role to come in and create some chaos. But I think it is a good point that you bring up, that it is interesting that Fernandez was brought out before Guenzati, when you'd usually expect him to really stay throughout the whole game. I can't remember the last time he was subbed off, James, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that for that to happen in the conference final was both fascinating and kind of worrying. But I mean, I think it's hard to make any speculations about why that is. I don't want to make any like theories that would just like be totally based off nothing. So I don't know. I can't really put myself in Neil Collins' mind for that, other than saying that it's just a very strange thing. He has made some like strange subs in the past, and sometimes they've worked. I think it's a good way to like throw off the other team. You don't really have like the film that you had for the first 60 minutes of the game, but at the same time, like, you can't really take off your MVP candidate just like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's strange. It really is strange. There's no other way to put it, to be honest. I don't know what else to say, but it's unfortunate that
So
get
the
on the score
next
sheet.
right, and the next substitution that happened was that one in the 78th minute. Sebastian Guenzati goes off for Deion Harris. Now,
Right.
Deion Harris has been a good substitute late on in games for sure, and he's shown his ability to come on, especially when the defenders' legs are tired, and give them a good run through. Leo Fernandez, at least you could say ahead of this substitution, he wasn't doing that well. When Deion Harris came on, I think that he added something for sure later on than the Leo Fernandez substitution. But it still wasn't a ton more going through the rest of the game, I suppose. I don't think that he created anything of note that I can, at least there's nothing that I can pull right off the top of my head here. The next moment that was very important was the 82nd minute, where Corbin Bone got himself a red card when it was supposed to be just a yellow. There was an altercation, as tends to happen in a game like this. Two teams that obviously have a history. Gets a little chippy at times. Lewis Hilton and Corbin Bone are, pushing each other back and forth, as also tends to happen in a game like this. That kind of stuff gets kind of stupid, and sometimes it also leads to a red card. Here, Corbin Bone had done something where he was going to get a yellow, and everybody was complaining. Lewis Hilton gets involved, and Corbin Bone kind of throws him away almost in the face, and that is almost always going to be a red card. And so he gets a straight red card there. Stupid decision on his part. And after that, it kind of changed for us a little bit. So in the 84th minute, there were a couple of substitutions for Louisville City, which also played an important role here. Joshua Winder is what I'm going to say after last week when we couldn't decide what to go with. He came on in the 84th for Wilson Harris. Wilson Harris is an attacker. Josh Winder is a center back. So obviously they're adding at the back. Napo Matsoso came on for Enoch Mushagalusa. Now, Napo Matsoso is a midfielder coming on for an attacker in Mushagalusa, who had actually had a lot of success in that first half. You know, he had been making a lot of runs down the left wing side where, you know, Connor Antley was the defender, and he had usually gone up because he likes to get involved in the attack. He might not have been there to cover every time. So those two players go off, and naturally that means that Louisville City end up in a more defensive posture. And I feel like they took up kind of a 5-3-1 position here, Carlos. It was, you know, they really didn't have much of an attack at all to, you know, not just in terms of their formation, but literally like they weren't trying to get much of an attack out of it. I think that most of the people at the bar, you know, soccer probably is, it's a relatively easy sport to break down. I don't think that there are, you know, a ton of nuanced things that go over people's heads. There are definitely levels. Like Neil Collins has taken his coaching courses, and he could talk about things that you and I would, you know, our eyes would just glaze over with what he's referring to. But for the most part, the large scheme of things, most people can understand what's happening here. And the momentum was definitely on our side. Louisville City had nothing going our way, and everybody pretty much figured that they were just playing for a tie and take it to penalties and see how it goes from there. You know, that's fair enough. In the 88th minute, they actually brought off Manny Perez, who was their right back and someone who was a lot more attacking than the guy who came on for him, another right back, Oscar Jimenez. So, yeah, they're just doing everything they can to defend. Fair enough. Now, Carlos, we didn't really create much after that, though. We had a lot of possession, and we had a lot more opportunities to get people into areas where they could do something, but we never actually created anything. And that was even with Lucky Mkosana coming on right before the start of the second period of extra time. I didn't see us do anything all that different, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, nothing. Like, really, there was nothing there. It was so unfortunate to watch, and it was so grueling to watch because you knew that Louisville was playing to go to penalties, which was already a little bit concerning enough, given that we had taken off Leo Fernandez and Sebastian Gonzatti, who have taken, by my recollection, all of our penalties in the past 2 seasons. So that was a little bit concerning. I figured that was the direction we were going. I was a little worried for our young goalie, Phil Breno. But after last week, I had my confidence in him. I don't really know what else to say about like why we couldn't break through Louisville's back line. They were, to their credit, very organized, and they moved very well as a unit. But there was really like nothing going through the middle. It was all just trying to work the outsides, work the wings, and hopefully Steven Dos Santos would be in the right spot at the right time and head a ball away. Or Lucky Mkosana would be in the right spot at the right time, how he usually seems to be in the latter portions of games. But obviously that didn't happen. So again, I think some of it goes back to our MVP, Leo Fernandez, who has had very significant moments of brilliance to create space. And I think he would have been incredibly valuable when we went up an extra player. With all the extra space he would have had to work the middle of the field. He's one of those guys that can do that because our wingers, for as many of them as we had in there, can't really do that in the middle of the field like he can. Deion Harris, to his credit, created a couple moments of danger for us where he said, well, screw it, I'll do it myself. And he just started taking on some guys on the wing. But then again, over there, you're very, very far from goal. So it's hard to do that and just, end up with a goal. Whereas if you're in the middle of the field and you take on a couple extra guys, you're in front of the goal, you can rip a shot, you can lay the ball off to somebody as you attract more attention. And Leo Fernandez has been a master of that throughout the season. So again, it was just very, very peculiar have made that sub. And obviously, you don't have the foresight of knowing a red card is coming. But even then, still a strange sub, and he would have been so valuable in overtime. And I think he was the big figure that we were missing, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that that's an especially important point because um, with all the extra space that the Rowdies did have from going that man up, Louisville with their red card, we did not take advantage of it. And, it's very difficult to draw out a team like Louisville, who were already doing extremely well in terms of their defensive posture, their defensive formation, and they were making sure that they covered themselves when we had possession and they wanted to win it back as soon as possible. And most of the time they did. When they went down a man, they could still keep themselves organized and still sit deeper and mostly prevent us from getting these chances. And again, they mostly did. We were unable to drag anybody out of the positions that would allow us to get in good crosses. Connor Antley and Dayon Harris were not really getting anything that way. And I don't think that anybody else was really helping out much either. Lucky did try, his damnedest, obviously. Steven Dos Santos did try his damnedest to, not just knock a couple players around, but see if they could hold the ball up and bring more Rowdies players close to them so that we could get some passing going. And that never really worked out either. It didn't really. The way that I said it was, based on the amount of space and the lack of, options that Louisville has when they're going forward. I was trying to get. I was saying that we are trying to get a goal here, and they are not even trying. If we don't win this game under these circumstances, I mean that's what really it would suck. I was just under the impression that we had to win this game based on everything that was going on, but unfortunately, it ended up Louisville getting actually one of the better chances of the extra time period, and this is what led to the corner where they scored. It came down, I believe, the left-hand side, kind of through the center, and then there was a pass to a player who was supposed to have effectively an open shot on net. Luckily, Rowdies come in with a late sliding tackle, and or not a sliding tackle, but they get in there. The sliding tackle, I believe, missed on that play, but the shot was still blocked nonetheless, and it was put out for a corner kick. And then the corner came in, and that is where we lost it, unfortunately. And they kind of just scored off of a scramble in our 6-yard box. I think that we had 2 or 3 attempts to clear it, and none of those was successful. There were obviously several bodies around that would probably prevent a clearance from getting out of the 6-yard box, but it wasn't just unsuccessful clearances. It was also, the lack of the original clearance when we first got to the ball, and Louisville had not scored yet. And then, it happens a second time. Obviously, it might have happened a third time, but you've just got to be obviously stronger defensively in that kind of situation. And, describing that as losing a man is, I don't know, when everybody is scrambling like that in the 6-yard box, that's probably difficult. But somebody obviously lost their man well before it got to the point where you could say that somebody lost the man in Elijah Winder, who actually scored the goal itself. Our marking wasn't just a problem at that point, is what I mean to say. We were trying to react to a problem that was immediate and put out that fire. But, to have created the fire in the first place is really the problem that I see. And that's where I feel that we kind of let ourselves down a bit. And unfortunately, that is what decided the whole game for us, is that one goal.
Yeah. One moment of just chaos, really, was what decided the game. And sucks so much. I think one more thing to bring up, James, that I kept noticing throughout the game was this. I mean, it's kind of going slightly off topic, but 10 offsides for the Tampa Bay Rowdies throughout the game was very uncharacteristic of this team. 10 offsides was just, I don't know. Like, I don't really know what to make of that, to be honest. It was just it's a number that pops out at me when I'm looking at the stats. I don't know what was going on. Maybe it's indicative of, the style of play we were playing early on, where we were kind of sitting back and playing long balls. But I mean, that's not something you want from a team that we know to be generally pretty organized, well organized, well coached. 10 offsides is not going to do you any favors um, away at Louisville in the conference final. So it is what it is. Tough. And I don't know. Nothing we can do about it now, obviously. Or I guess during the game either. It's not like I'm on the field. But I don't know. I think that's an important stat to mention because I think it's characterizing how this game went, how unusual it was for a team who we know to be a well-organized group. 10 offsides, 0 goals created, 38 minutes of being up an extra man. That's not going to cut it ever, particularly in the conference final.
No, it certainly will not. Now, Carlos, we usually do our man of the match as the last question here. I actually figure that we'll do it now, and then we'll do our final question because that question is just a little bit more, pondering and navel gazing, let's say.
Yeah.
But let's do our man of the match here. I want to start off by saying that I don't think that we had a ton going for us in the attack, no matter who was on and in it. So probably for me, it's going to be one of the defenders that ends up being the man of the match on a Rowdies perspective. And I'm not sure that any of them stood out in an attacking sense. Maybe one or two had, a better play there than others. But I still think that, overall, I guess for me, Aaron Guillen was probably my man of the match for the Rowdies. I think that he did a couple of good things attacking wise. It wasn't much overall, but there wasn't much to work with generally. So it comes down to the defensive side, and I think that he was pretty important there. And he still did come up with a couple of big plays at the back, but in the end, it was not enough, of course, and that's unfortunate. But he can only do what he can do in those moments, and I think that he did at least those.
Yeah. I'm going to go take a similar path as you and go with Lawrence Wyke. He had a good game on the back line, was a workhorse as per usual back there. He is a very valuable asset for a back line playing against a team as speedy as Louisville. He demonstrated that last week as well against Memphis. I mean, again, when the team played like that, it's not really a ton of great candidates. That's my man of the match for this particular game, with honorable mention to two players, Steven Dos Santos for running into the Louisville goalie who was really getting on my nerves. So good for him. And then Corbin Bone for keeping us in the game with his red card. So thank you for that, Mr. Bone. But like we know, didn't end up working out for us anyway. So it is what it is. That's my man of the match. My two honorable mentions. Unfortunate, James.
All right. Well, there you have it. That is everything that we have for this game in particular. It was a pretty long questions and analysis section, but that's what happens, I guess, when you don't have another game to preview. Carlos, we do have another question here that is not specifically related to this game, and it is just I suppose this is going to be, now that Leo is not on the show, we haven't been doing the hot take section that we used to do. And, I didn't always have a really good hot take. So sometimes I kind of went with something that was just, a quick emotion, see how that felt and, something like that. Here, I kind of want to take the temperature again and do something like that. What is what are you feeling after this? As a fan of this team, what are you feeling after this Eastern Conference Finals loss? And, this would have been the third USL championship final had we made it in a row, naturally. Yeah. Now, we didn't. So based on this and the season that we had and how everything went, how are you feeling as a fan of this team? And what do you, if you have any immediate reactions, I don't know, maybe you want Neil Collins out. I'm assuming that's not quite the case. I'm assuming that there would be, some people out there who might think that, but I am certainly not one. Maybe you think that, we need a revamp of the whole roster. Maybe you think we only need some tinkering here and there. what are you generally feeling like right off the bat? Only what, 48 hours out from this?
Yeah, definitely not Neil Collins out. I think he's proven to be really, really good young coach. I mean, his story is just really incredible. Also, like having to become a coach from one day to the next after the U.S. Open Cup loss in Jacksonville, who at the time was a 4th division team. He's proven to be a great coach, and I would hope honestly that he stays because I know there's probably going to be opportunities coming up for him with other teams.
Yes, I
Possibly
generally
around the
agree
world.
about Neil Collins and the potential for other opportunities.
Yeah, I imagine something like, I don't know, it's total speculation. I have no evidence or anything, but I imagine something like in Scotland would be appealing for him. But who knows? Yeah, so apart from that, it's 30,000 degree look at this. I'm not really upset about not making it to the final, just because we have our conference championship trophies already. We have 2 of those already the past couple of years. What we're missing is the big one, James. Um, that first time we made it back in 2020, we had the incident with the final being canceled due to COVID, which will forever probably hurt a little bit more than losing it to Orange County last year, just because of the uncertainty of not knowing what would have happened, not having that closure. Then we had that loss to Orange County in the final in a game that, most of the league thought we would win pretty handily. And then this year we make it back to the conference final, don't make it past there, no shot to win the title. So it's not, I think I tweeted this out after the game when I was in my feels, watching this game in Georgetown, Delaware with my fraternity brothers. It's hard to discount what the team has done over the past few years. It's actually very impressive. And I think we've solidified ourselves as one of, the powerhouses in this league. If not, one of them, then like the powerhouse. The only other one that has been comparable to us and obviously surpassed us because they've won a USL title and now they beat us was Louisville. Other than Louisville, there's not a ton of other teams you can point to and say that this has consistently been one of the best teams in this league. So I feel good about the state of the club, and I'm very confident that we can figure out how to keep this up and figure out where we went wrong again to hopefully get back to the title game, hopefully make the adjustments, the re-signings, the additions we need to go for it again next year and do it all again in March or April or whenever we start it. That being said, it's hard to see where on the roster we can add any significant talent, because for the most part, a lot of the guys that start for this club are among the best in their position in the league. So it is really difficult to make like an upgrade at most of our positions. We can make a lot of lateral moves and get players of the same quality that might surpass the current players we have. But I mean, if you look back at what we have, there's a lot of just really, really good talent here. The guys we know are likely gone by all accounts are LaCava and Castellanos because they were on loan.
Right.
So that means you might need a LaCava-esque player because we don't really have a forward who has his attributes, who can do what he can do. Maybe Deion Harris can kind of take on the LaCava role if they convert him into that kind of forward that LaCava was. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself into like off-season talk. But there are a lot of really, really good candidates to bring into this club this offseason. Guys who played really, really well for teams that did very, very poorly. Guy that comes to my head off the top of my head was Williams for Charleston. He would be, I think, a fantastic addition to this team because he had a fantastic season with the Battery despite being on a team that did so poorly. So I think it's a testament to his quality. But with Lee Cohen over there now, I'm not sure he's going to let us take him.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
So that's kind of a kicker there. I don't know if we want to get into that talk yet, though. So I'll hold off, my idea for any other prospects. But this team is littered with a lot of good talent that, again, it's hard for me to say concretely that it would be an upgrade in any position, but it would, at worst, be like a lateral move and add some impressive talent. For example, Nicky Law is now 34 years old. Who knows? Maybe he's done at the end of the season. He's had a long career. But, I mean, again, to his credit, he kept up really well for 104 minutes this game. And he kept up well throughout his time with us here at the Rowdies. What else? Maybe we look for a goalie. I don't know. Maybe Breno stays here, but he is technically still on loan. Our other goalie is Ryko, with CJ Cochran, again, technically being on loan, but I know nothing of his situation with his original club, the OKC Energy. So there's a lot of variables at not a lot. There's some variables. I think they primarily come from the goalie position, the LaCava style forward that we might need to replace. And I think we go out there and look for a solid center back is my last thing I'll say going into this offseason. I think that was something that we were missing for a while this season because Castellanos got hurt and because Timmy Mel went out to Chattanooga. Maybe Timmy Mel is fit to come back and be our starter. Maybe he improved a ton this season. But I think that would be my biggest ask to the Rowdies front office is for us to go out there and look for a USL all league type center back, which is a big ask, of course. But I would, if we can keep a bunch of this roster together, which we've proven to be able to do better than a lot of teams in the USL in the second division of American soccer. I think one of the key pieces we're missing, and we will be missing with Castellanos gone, is an imposing veteran USL all league type center back, similar to the kind we had in Forrest Lasso. Who knows if he comes back? Maybe. I mean, he's tweeting about the Rowdies and posting about the Rowdies on his Instagram stories. So that was nice to see.
Yeah.
But there's I'm rambling now, James, so stop me. But there's a lot of prospects out there, and again, I think this is more for like an off-season type episode. But I think it's important to mention the few spaces where I think we could go out there and find some replacements. So it is what it is. Tough result to end the season. But on the grand scheme of things, James, I think I can't be super disappointed in where our club is, given the record, the wins, the success at home, and raw entertainment value that they've provided for our fans. And I think we're just missing the big one here. Kind of feels like the Lightning building up to their 2020 Stanley Cup. Chipping away, getting back there every year, getting to like the conference final and then losing, making it to one final and then losing that one in 2015. So similar vibes to that. So maybe it's coming. It's definitely coming. Like that big title's coming soon. It's just a matter of when that's going to happen at this point because we're getting so close. But the final piece isn't there. And I guess it's up to the front office to figure out what that final piece is. So who knows? Who knows who we're going to re-sign? Who knows how many of our guys will be able to keep? But again, like I said, this league is riddled with talent, such that if we lose somebody important, I think we can go out there and find a lateral replacement. And who knows, maybe an upgrade as the season starts.
Yeah, I as a team or as a fan of this team, I should say, the way that I feel about the team itself, obviously we are in a good position regardless of what just happened this past weekend. We've been to 3 Eastern Conference finals in a row. We've won 2 of them. It's unfortunate that we couldn't play in the USL Championship itself in 2020. It's unfortunate that the one in 2021 went the way that it did. I think that, we talked about it at the time. There were a couple vulnerabilities that the Rowdies had that could be exploited if you did, if you planned out properly, and obviously Orange County did, and they took advantage of a couple of situations that they were in at that time with set pieces. So, that happens.
Yeah.
Set pieces you can't necessarily account for outside of, just being as prepared as you can, but sometimes that just doesn't do it either. When it comes to this game, I think that the Rowdies have had a tough season. I would probably venture a guess to say that the Rowdies last season were a more talented team. I don't know if that is controversial among fans. Maybe that's something that we could ask people, is what they think, maybe if they think that last season or this season was a more talented roster overall. And, you do have to take form into consideration for that, because Leo Fernandez was on top form this year, but last year,
Right.
Sebastian Guazzati was on top form. So, yeah, that's something you have to think about. And I don't think that it was just a coincidence that we finished last year as the league leaders. I think that it was generally a more prepared team for everything. And, I think that we had not just problems exposed necessarily, but I think that we had like inabilities exposed when it came to Memphis and Louisville these last two games, is that we really didn't have a lot of answers for trying to get around them, and maybe we need Leo Fernandez and another Leo Fernandez. Maybe we need two people who can do what he can do. Without us having had that grand overall success, the one thing that I do think about after this game that I worry about is, I'm not necessarily sure that there will be a lot of players on this Rowdies roster who end up joining an MLS team, let's say, other than the ones that are on loan. But I do worry that maybe players get offers from other USL teams who are like, hey, we can go and win this, whether that's Louisville City if they do win this upcoming weekend, and I surely hope they don't, whether that's San Antonio because they go and win, and I would prefer that they do.
Right.
Maybe it's even Orange County. Orange County obviously sucked this year. They were terrible, but they did at least, get the trophy. Maybe someone is building up a team right now that we don't know about that is about to, turn it on real fast. And when they reveal to some Rowdies player, like, hey, this is the roster I'm building, do you want to be a part of that? They see that and they're like, oh shit, I better get over there because I know they're going to do good things. As you already mentioned, Lee Cohen, he's one of the best in this business. And if he's doing that, I wouldn't, if he's going to poach any players, why wouldn't he poach players that he already knows pretty well, of course. So,
Right.
That's one thing that I do worry about, is just without us having had that top success that we want. That's where I kind of worry is, could players see greener pastures, not in a league above, not in a league abroad, but literally just a different team. That I do worry about that.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. But I feel like the player that would be more prone to being tempted by that offer would be the older player, kind of on the back end of their career, kind of not really looking to go anywhere else, staying in the USL. I would think a Guazzati or a Leo Fernandez, to be honest. Those are the guys that are both, 32, 31, and 30, respectively. But I think there's also, I don't know, this might be like totally non-soccer related, but I think there's a very like human aspect as well to this game, and particularly to the USL, in a league where players don't get the, huge contracts that you might get somewhere else. Even MLS doesn't give those huge contracts, but in particular the USL, I think there's a very human aspect in that. Sebastian Guazzati and Leo Fernandez have been here for such a long time. They've had kids that have grown up here their whole lives. Their family's been here for the past 5-6 years. It's been like their home. I just can't imagine these guys leaving. You know what I mean? It's definitely possible. Like I'm not discounting that. It's definitely possible for their soccer careers that a move elsewhere might be better. Um, but that being said, it feels like the guys that would be exposed to that are likely to stay, in my opinion. But take that with a grain of salt, um, based off just like raw feelings and instincts about them as people, I guess. So totally non-soccer related. Um, you know, nothing I'm getting from the field to make that conclusion. But I think you do have a point in saying that, maybe like a Lewis Hilton might be more exposed to that as well, might be more prone to that. Maybe an Aaron Guillen. But I don't know. I mean, I think there's no real way for me to make a good guess as to who might leave for a Louisville or a San Antonio, or I don't know, maybe even a Phoenix if they're rebuilding.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a tough sell, Phoenix. Just because it's like Arizona. I don't really know what goes on over there.
Nothing good.
Then,
nothing good.
Yeah, and then two, I mean, they're really struggling to rebuild. So, but I'm sure they'll be back soon. So, I don't know. Bit of a tangent there.
Yeah. That's I think that's a good place for us to leave it now, though. I think that we have covered everything that we're going to, and just this quick vent sesh that we're having here. But
Yeah.
let's move into the extra time. Oh, go ahead.
I know, and just I think like I mentioned guys that I might look to bring in if I'm the Rowdies front office, but that's just scratching the surface. I think we can do an episode later on this offseason where we will dive deeper into what our wish list looks like. For USL
that would be a
guys.
good episode for sure.
And yeah, because there's a ton of guys I have on my list. An Enzo Martinez has always been somebody who I hate to play against, but a guy I would love to have on my team, type of guy. And there's a lot of guys like that we can dive into. So just to mention that, the people I mentioned earlier are not the only people I have on my mind. Definitely some good players to keep an eye on as potential replacements for outgoing guys.
Yep, absolutely. So we're going to move into the extra time segment now, but beforehand, I just want to take a time to say liking and subscribing is free, of course, and we appreciate when you do that. But possibly, if you need some new threads this year, you can also support this podcast just that little bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs that we've got going on over there. We will have a link in the description, and there will be a promo code for you to use for 10% off. That code is COYR. If you would like 10% off your order, please go check it out. Now, let us get into the extra time, like I said here. In the Western Conference semifinal, San Antonio took care of business and won 2-0. With that, they will host Louisville City in the final. I'm going to go ahead and say it, Carlos. I am rooting for San Antonio to win. I do not want to see Louisville get the title after this. And I think that, this is the first time, I guess, in the USL history, I think it was, that two number one seeds will actually face each other in the final. So if everything continues, to go the way that it has, then the number one league seed overall should probably win, right? That just makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'll tell you what, James, I think if Louisville plays like this, how they played against the Rowdies against San Antonio, in San Antonio, I don't think it'll be particularly close. San Antonio is a really, really good team. They're just so well-rounded. And now Louisville even has their Corbin Bone knocked out of the game for next week. And he's such a vet of the game. He's a guy that knows how to win finals. So I think it's going to be a really challenging place for them to play. San Antonio, again, such a really well-rounded team. I know they won 2-0 against Colorado I didn't see the second goal, but FootMob says they scored a 90 plus 11 minute goal. So I guess there was 11 minutes of stoppage time in that game. It's kind of strange, whatever. But yeah, it looks like they took care of Colorado Springs pretty handily. That being said, Louisville is still a good team. But I think San Antonio will come out with the result it's favorable to them. And I'll say one more thing. I don't know why people always, there's like a cliche in sports about, like losing to the champion and like how that's good. Like I've always, whenever my team loses to another team in the playoffs, I'm like actively rooting against them. I never understood why people want to like lose to the champion. I never understood it, but yeah, for that reason, I'm taking San Antonio to win. And that's like my prediction. And as a team I'm rooting for, I have no reason to dislike them. And I have plenty of reason to dislike Louisville. So personally, I'm rolling with San Antonio. So I guess that's our official RBLR. Teams are back in the final.
Yeah, yeah. Chris Hockman, a guest on this show in the past, and a guy who is well known around USL Twitter circles at Chris H Sport, asked us, "Y'all supporting SAFC next week since it's my new beat, right?" I mean, we already answered him on Twitter, but if there was ever any doubt that maybe we were lying and hiding what we truly meant,
Yeah.
meant and felt and everything, no.
Yeah.
It is San Antonio all the way from down here in Tampa Bay. I will tell you that.
Yeah. No, and they're a fun team to watch too. I've seen a couple of their games. Like it's a team that will be for pure entertainment value, fun to watch in a final, in their stadium, which is really, really nice. Great
Yeah.
atmosphere. So good luck to them and their fans. I'm sure they'll put on a show, both on and off the field, next weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. So to move on to our next point here, it's the USL League One final. We mentioned that last week. It was happening this upcoming weekend, which is now past, and it was Sunday. Last night, the South Georgia Tormenta beat Chattanooga Red Wolves, and congratulations to them. In particular, congratulations to former Rowdy Alex Morel. He did not actually get off the bench in this final, but he still did win the trophy and the medal that comes with it, obviously. So happy for them. And I saw online, actually won a double, if you can call it that, because the South Georgia Tormenta women's team won the USLW League. So
Nice.
an interesting couple of trophies to pick up over the year, but good for them. Happy to see them do it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a powerhouse they started forming, kind of out of nowhere. I don't know what they're doing, but clearly the front office has done a really good job of putting together a good-looking organization in Statesboro, Georgia, of all places. So happy for them. That's fun. It's good for U.S. soccer to have a championship presence in a small town like that, or small city, in Statesboro, Georgia. So very, very fun. I will say I'm going to take partial credit on behalf of the Tampa Bay Rowdies for their championship, given that they played their preseason game against us before our season started. So I'm going to say we prepared them to win the title, and I'm going to take a moral victory from that and a tangential USL League One title for your Tampa Bay Rowdies. So I think we can all celebrate that together.
Nice. You mentioned also last week that it was good for, small town America to have a good soccer presence. And you're right. That is a very important thing. I think that it will be good. Statesboro is not even a city that I had heard of until they got a soccer team. So good for South Georgia. Yeah. Now moving on to the next point, the MLS Cup final was also this past weekend. We told you a little bit about it on the past episode, and I'll tell you, Carlos, it was actually pretty intense and exciting. I did not expect it to go that way, but the first half was kind of drab, and then it picked up from there. Congratulations go out to LAFC, who won the game, and in particular, congratulations go out to former Rowdy John McCarthy. Now, Carlos, I don't know how much of this you got to see, but I just want to break it down for people who are unaware. So
go for it.
It goes into extra time after a game that was 2-2, finished 2-2, and some late goals in that one. So it was already feeling pretty exciting, and all the commentators were like, "Is this the best MLS game ever?" And I'm sitting there with, I think Eureka had joined me by then, and I was like, "Okay, buddy, you got to calm down with that. That's a little silly." Gets into extra time, and so Philadelphia Union have a breakaway, I think in roughly the 116th minute, something like that. Goalkeeper for LAFC, named Maxime Crépeau, Canadian, who was supposed to go to the World Cup, comes out of his box to challenge this breakaway chance, and he probably broke his leg. I don't know. We don't know at this point what happened, but he challenged the opposing player, got his legs kicked out from attacking the guy that was chasing the ball. And he's probably broken his foot. And the attacking player for Philadelphia, Corey Burke, he eventually also had to be subbed out of the game. So it was a red card offense and a foul. He took the foul and he got injured and subbed off. He's going to miss the World Cup, and he missed the end of the game. LAFC are down a man. So you're like, okay, Philly are probably going to do well here, surely. As it turns out, Philly scored, and they are up 3-2, excuse me. And extra time. We are in stoppage time for the second half of the extra time period. And then in possibly the 120th plus 7, something like that, famous Gareth Bale, rises above Philadelphia Union's 6'6" center back to head home and make it 3-3, and it goes to penalties. I mean, again, the commentators are here. Okay, this has got to be the best MLS Cup final ever, and I'm starting to come around to it. Okay, I think maybe I believe you. It goes to penalties. LAFC misses their first one, and I'm like, wow, Philadelphia Union have it all laid out for them. There is a backup goalkeeper in net. LA just missed. Okay, good enough, right? No, Philadelphia Union misses. LAFC scores. Philadelphia Union has theirs saved by backup goalkeeper, that certain John McCarthy. Then LAFC makes theirs. And then Philadelphia Union steps up again, has their penalty saved by John McCarthy. LAFC steps up, scores again, the game is over. And it was legitimately the wildest MLS Cup final I've seen, and I have seen a fair few over the years now. But yeah, I will give it to the commentators. They were right. It wasn't just hyperbole because they were trying to sell while they were on the platform itself. But that was an amazing game.
Yeah, I saw parts of it. Saw that former Rowdy John McCarthy had a huge hand in the win. So I was very, very happy for him because he was such a beloved figure in his short time down here. Also happy for all the Ecuadorians that are on LAFC, of which there are surprisingly many. One of them, Jose Cifuentes, looks like he'll be leaving the team at the end of the season. He got the attention of Brighton in the Premier League and Valladolid in Spain. So happy for him in particular to have made some noise with LAFC as a sort of stepping stone to bigger things in Spain and England. So really, really good game for what I saw. But to be honest, I was all locked in on the Rowdies that day. It was hard for me to focus on any other game, but did see the highlights. Very, very cool game. Good for soccer in the U.S. to have such an entertaining game for any casual who happen to be watching, maybe start to fall in love with the game. So always good for soccer in the U.S. to have raw, entertaining performances like that on national TV.
Yeah, pure chaos does not actually hurt the sport, I think, especially in America. I think that it's actually pretty helpful. So I had a thing lined up for the USL Championship Team of the Year. I think that honestly, Carlos, we should skip that for this week, and we'll get back to it in the future. I think that it's just going to be a tough pill to swallow based on what we have been talking about for most of this episode.
Sure.
So yeah, let's get back to that in the future, and we'll talk about what we think is deserved or not deserved.
For sure.
When we get to that, and I don't think that we need to cover it right now. Let's just do these last listener questions that we had online. And Carlos, I'll read these out and then I'll toss them over to you. So this is from Tom Denham at Tom Denham 3. Hopefully we can keep more, but let's say we can only keep 5 starters from this season. Who is your top 5 to bring back next year?
Yeah, that is such a difficult question. I'm going to say, Jake LaCava and Castellanos don't count as people I can pick, given that they'll be going back to their teams. Off the bat, I'm going Leo Fernandez, obviously, after his performance this season. Leo Fernandez, Sebastian Guenzati, 2. Then I'm going to take Dayon Harris, 3, because I think he's going to be on the up and up. And I think he's going to play a much bigger role for us next season if he sticks around. Lewis Hilton I think will be my 4. And then on the back line, Aaron Guillen. So that's my 5. And if I had a 6th, I'll throw in Breno. That we can keep him down here and keep building on the legacy that he built in such a short time down here. But yeah, so as for my 5, I'm going Seba, Leo Fernandez, Hilton, Dayon Harris, and Aaron Guillen. I think I could go through a lot of reasons for why we should keep everybody else as well. But if I'm limiting myself to 5, I think that's my clear top 5.
All right. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly who my 5 is going into this. I had, we saw this ahead of time, obviously, so I did have a general idea, but it's tough to narrow down for sure. So I'm gonna go through them mentally as I'm saying them out loud. First off, if we can keep Leo Fernandez, keep Leo Fernandez. Done. That's what number 1. There's no question about that. Number 2 for me, although it would be close one way or another, Lewis Hilton. If we can keep Lewis Hilton, keep Lewis Hilton. The next one for me probably would be Aaron Guillen. I think that those are my top 3. I think that Leo Fernandez, Lewis Hilton, Aaron Guillen are my top 3. Aaron Guillen was our Iron Man in terms of his starting and appearing in every game this season. So, I think that he absolutely deserves that shout. Now, goalkeeper, it's a tough situation because CJ Cochran is on loan from OKC Energy, and supposedly they're coming back. There's a lot of chatter online one way or another. I don't know, but yeah, exactly. So that one's tough. I'm not entirely sure. Phil Breno is also on loan from us, and I don't think that he would prefer to go back to forward Madison if he could stay here. So maybe I'll put Phil Breno in there. I'm going to put Phil Breno with an asterisk for right now. I'll put him on that. I feel like Connor Antley is definitely one of my 5. He's definitely one of my 5 that I want out there. And outside of that, it's just hard to remember who was there in such a very consistent performer. Sebastian Dalgard was very good, but he, had a couple of stretches that he was out. Jake Arman was very good, but he had stretches that he was out. I think that Lawrence White had very good stretches over the course of the season. He did have one stretch when he was out, and he had another problem that might affect whether or not I would like him to stick around. Sure. I think everyone listening might know what I'm referring to there, but so far we don't have any more confirmation on that one or not. I really don't know. So with all of that being said, I think that the players that I definitely want to stick around, I'm going to go again, Leo Fernandez, Lewis Hilton, Aaron Guillen, and Connor Antley for sure. And then outside of that, if I'm going to take a 5th one, I will join you and I will say Phil Breno. He will be my 5th. There you go. Yeah. All right. So that's my 5. That's my 5. So good question. I appreciate that. That was a fun little exercise. And the next one is at TBR Greenman asks, but for real, can we get info on anyone who is still contracted through next season? No clue in what to expect for. And Carlos, you and I don't have anything at this point because it's not readily available. But based on this question, I do want to put a little promise out that you and I will take some time over the course of the upcoming weeks. Now, next week we'll do a World Cup special. So we'll give ourselves 2 weeks at least to go through this and try and find some more information. But we will go through and try and find prior press releases or anything along those lines, where there was a news that said, oh, this player was signed for this year. And if they have any of that information available still online, whether that's in, the Rowdies archives, the USL archives, transfer market, I don't know. We will try and find that, and we will compile that so we can at least get the most basic idea available of who might stick around and who might not from their contract that currently exists. So we don't have an answer for you at TBR Greenman, but we will work on this because not only is it good for, the Rowdies fans to have an idea, but Carlos, I think you and I would just straight up like to know ourselves what the deal is there.
Why not? Yeah. I will personally go down to Alex Stadium and interrogate Ryan Helfrich until he gives me answers. Because there's literally no way online to know unless you deep dive and do some crazy research, which of course I will do the crazy research to figure that out. But yeah, hard to find answers on that. Kind of things always very locked up in U.S. soccer, which is unfortunate for transparency. And for the fan that wants to know who's coming back next year, makes it very, very stressful for no reason. But yeah, it is what it is. Definitely no answer on that. But like you said, we'll look into what we can.
Yep, exactly. So I think everyone, that is going to do it for us this week. It is tough, and we're going to come back to the Rowdies for sure. We're going to revisit not only this game, but everyone that led up to it. And we're going to, do a little bit more dissecting. But right now, it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think that, Carlos, you and I need to unwind a little bit from the Rowdies. And next week, we're going to do that. We're going to do a World Cup special. I will preview the U.S. Carlos, you can preview Ecuador. Eureka said we might even get some guys on from the past to preview other teams involved. So let's see who we can get. Stick around next week, listeners, if you would like to hear some previews for maybe other teams around the world. But that is going to do it for us for this week. This November 7th, 2022, after the Rowdies' unfortunate loss in the Eastern Conference Final. Now, everyone, if you would, please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports. You can get a little bit of a preview just by, I think, our likes and mentions, Carlos, on Twitter. I am at RBLR James K. What about you? Where could they get at you?
Yeah, at Carlos TPA10 on Twitter, where I, looking back, have spent a significant amount of time looking at college basketball tweets now that today, November 7th, 2022, on the day we record the unfortunate last recap of the season, college basketball starting. So I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but that's pretty fun. That's what I've been tweeting about, Georgetown basketball trying to get back to their glory in the 80s, which inevitably will not happen. So yeah, taking a break from tweeting about Rowdies for a little bit, but we'll obviously get back on that very, very soon. Yeah, I'm going to put together an off-season wish list soon and just throw it on Twitter, see what anybody has to say. Because like I said, this is kind of a fun time as the off-season starts rolling around, because there's so many teams in the USL with so many good players that want to make a move upward to a team that can win, like the Rowdies, to a team in a really, really good spot geographically, like the Rowdies. So yeah, that'll be coming up on my Twitter sometime soon.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. And you can also get at us with the hashtag AskRBLR. Please do that if you have any questions, not only for the World Cup special, but for everything related to the Rowdies once we get back to that in this offseason coming up here. Now, also, if you would like to hear whatever we have to say about the Rowdies this past season, we're going to be going back and trying to find some stuff that maybe you forgot about over the course of this year, and we're going to be bringing that back into your brain. So if you would, please like and subscribe to our podcast. We are on Spotify and the iHeartRadio app. We are on Apple and Google Podcasts. We are on YouTube and all other major podcast platforms for one more week without a Rowdies preview, unfortunately. We still got to say it. You know it's coming up. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.